My Hero Academia is trying to tell two different stories, and neither one fully wins. Have you ever finished a series and thought, wait, what story was this actually trying to tell? Because that's exactly how I felt when My Hero Academia ended. Now, make no mistake, MHA was one of the biggest manga of its era, and for good reason. On paper, it's almost perfect. A feel-good shonen inspired by Western superhero comics, about a powerless kid who gets his shot at greatness. It looks great, it's easy to read, and it launched right as major shonen series like Naruto and Bleach were wrapping up. But despite all that momentum, My Hero Academia has a fundamental problem. It's one that affects every character, every arc, and every theme. MHA is built on two incompatible stories forced into one narrative. The first story is a critique. It's about a world where heroism has been commercialized, where being a hero isn't about saving people, but about branding, rankings, popularity, and marketability. In this version of the story, Midoriya isn't just fighting villains. He's meant to confront the hollow system that created them. He's supposed to redefine what being a hero really means. The second story is a classic shonen power fantasy. A once powerless boy inherits the strongest ability in the world. Can he master it fast enough to replace the world's greatest hero? Can he surpass his rivals and defeat overwhelming evil before society collapses? Either story works on its own, but trying to tell both at the same time, that's where the cracks start to show. Let's go back to the beginning. Chapter 1 immediately establishes systemic problems. Bakugo is praised simply for being born with a strong quirk. Midoriya is told by All Might himself that being quirkless means he has to give up on heroism. After the heroes fail to save Bakugo, Midoriya's decision to rush into danger reminds All Might of a pivotal lesson he'd forgotten. And after saving the boys, All Might delivers the iconic line, "You too can be a hero." Early MHA doubles down on this world building. Ida is shocked when Midoriya saves Uraraka during the entrance exams, in part because it earns no points. Shinso openly talks about being discriminated against for having a villainous quirk. Todoroki exists because of a quirk marriage. Mount Lady markets herself on sex appeal. Momo's internship is basically celebrity endorsement training. Gang Orca is voted most villainous looking hero, which highlights heteromorph bias. Even Stain, the series' most ideologically focused villain, calls out fake heroes and is treated as extreme, but not entirely wrong. In this version of My Hero Academia, heroism isn't noble, it's a career path. It's fame, it's money, it's PR. And Midoriya is framed as the exception, the genuine hero in a system full of compromises. That's why the story keeps calling him a true hero. He's meant to contrast people like Endeavor, Bakugo, and even Uraraka, who initially wants to be a hero for the paycheck. So far, everything points towards a story about systemic failure. But after the overhaul arc, Horikoshi slowly begins to pull away from that critique. Bakugo and Endeavor receive redemption arcs, but their behavior is no longer framed as a product of hero culture. Bakugo isn't shaped by a status-obsessed system, he's just a jerk. UA is full of kind, emotionally healthy students, turning Bakugo into an outlier instead of a symptom. Endeavor's abuse isn't portrayed as something hero society encouraged. It's treated as uniquely his fault. Quirk marriages exist, but the Todoroki situation is framed like a bizarre one-off instead of a known consequence of hero culture. And other themes quietly fade in the background. Quirkless discrimination disappears after chapter 2, heteromorph bias is mostly confined to the arcs of Shoji and Spinner, and Lady Nagant's entire critique of the Hero Commission is resolved off-screen. The story introduces systemic problems, and then abandons them. So maybe the villains carry that thematic weight, right? Well, not really. Most villains are driven by personal obsessions, not ideology. Overhaul wants power and control. Toga kills because it feels good. Dabi wants revenge, regardless of the cost. Twice openly rejects rehabilitation. Shigaraki, ultimately, is just a pawn of All for One. And Stain, the one villain who genuinely kinda challenges hero society, vanishes from most of the narrative. It's because the villains don't meaningfully challenge the system that the themes lose their teeth. Instead of moral gray areas, we get increasingly destructive antagonists whose actions overwhelm whatever point they might have had. The story explores the danger of placing the weight of the world on one man's shoulders, and questions what becomes of those who slip through his grasp. But these villains didn't fall through the cracks, they chose to jump. Which brings us to the core issue. My Hero Academia wants to critique systemic failure while also being a clean, good versus evil shonen. Early MHA sets up a morally complex world. Later MHA simplifies it. The result is a story that gestures at depth but rarely commits to it. Character arcs feel disconnected from the world's flaws. Villains don't push their heroes thematically. Ideas are introduced, then softened, then dropped. A society that once felt fragile and artificial becomes strangely functional. My Hero Academia wanted to be deep, but it also wanted to be safe. And in trying to be both, it never fully becomes either. In the end, My Hero Academia suffers from an identity crisis. It begins as a critique of a broken system and ends as a mostly straightforward hero story. And that choice affects everything. Midoriya, Bakugo, Endeavor, the villains, all of it. So here's my question to you. Which story should My Hero Academia have been? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.